Welcome to Sector 4 F1 in Theory. In this video I'm going to be looking at my predictions for the 2021 Constructors Championship. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. The back of the grid. The more I looked into the cars and the drivers, the more I start to think that nothing this year was certain. For one thing, I'm certainly not sure about what's going to end up at the bottom of the championship table this year. Number 10, Haas. The team froze development quite early on last year and have already suggested that this year is a write-off. However, all might not be as it seems. As I'll explain at another time, I think Haas are going to be replaced, and it could be already happening as we speak. While we aren't likely to lose the Haas name this year, the Uralkali logo is getting pretty big compared to the team's actual name on all the merchandise. Could we be seeing the birth of Team Uralkali? Maybe. With the team deciding not to spend their development points at the beginning of the year, they may have thrown away any opportunity to get ahead in the pack, but they might also be sandbagging. Something I've heard mixed opinions on is whether the development tokens can be used later in the year. A team like Haas right now isn't going to be pushing for victories, instead hoping for the scraps, any points they can pick up on the way through the season. So giving themselves some time to run the car might leave them room to find some areas where they can innovate to improve their position later in the year, perhaps on something like a new nose. While you could potentially see Haas's young driver lineup impressing with some surprising showings, they are only likely to pick up those surprise points, or maybe a 10th position point or two if they are lucky. I'm not expecting them to jump very far up the grid this year, but I could be wrong. Either way, I think this is probably the last year we see Haas in the sport under that name. Number 9, Williams. While I really hope Williams comes back into the midfield with the new regulations from 2022, I just don't think they've got enough of a chance to make up the difference this year. Russell is great and Latifi is there too. I don't have much to say about him, sorry. But while Williams aren't coming out and saying it in the same way Haas have, I think this year is pretty much a write-off for the team. They focus on their efforts on the rule changes next year. Their car was fine during testing, but unsurprisingly wasn't anything to write home about. I think they've probably made some good motions this year in the aero department, and they do have a winning power unit and a fantastic driver in Russell. But I just don't think they have the tools to put it all together right now to move back up the ranks. Number 8, Alfa Romeo. The Sauber team, which has been around consistently since 1993, has been struggling to wow anyone for quite a while. Under the name Alfa Romeo since 2019, they've seen little to no success, only scoring marginal points. At times, its drivers have shown flares of exciting driving, but they've just not been able to keep up with the midfield. As you'll see when we get to Ferrari, I think this is an issue of passion. While they didn't have the budget for the big teams, the budget cap should have made them feel a bit more at home with what they were able to spend in comparison to some of the giants. Their drivers are fine, though I would imagine this is Kimi's last year in the sport. He's got to retire from his hobby sometime.
It's more like a hobby for me, so obviously I don't need to do it if I don't want.
And the big change in regulations next year might be the right time for that to happen. It would be nice if we could go out with a bang, but like so many drivers before him, I think he's more likely to fizzle out without much fanfare. Number 7, AlphaTauri. AlphaTauri are an exciting team to watch this year in my opinion, but I suppose with the 7th place finish I'm not expecting too much from them. Both drivers have something to prove, and they should benefit from the Honda improvements I'm going to mention when we talk about Red Bull. Yuki Tsunoda is probably the nicest guy in F1 from the interviews I've seen and the appearance on Chasing the Dream documentary series on F1 TV. He's obviously a competitive guy, with some amazing F2 performances last year, making him a real dark horse in that championship. While I can't see AlphaTauri making a run at the Constructors or Drivers' Championship with either driver, I could see them playing with some good strategy, like we saw last year from the team, and scoring some really good points. Unfortunately, the midfield is just so strong, it's hard to bet on them against any of the teams higher up my list. The midfield. The midfield was the hardest group to predict. Honestly, these 4 teams could end up in any order. I wouldn't be surprised. Number 6, Alpine. Alpine are a real uncertainty for me. The car ran really well during testing and was probably the most reliable one on the grid. The teams have done a great job over the past couple of years to really improve their game from one of the lower performing teams to one of the upper midfield players. With their fantastic lineup of the 2-time world champion Fernando Alonso and the hidden gem of a driver that is Ocon, they really have a chance to do better than they have before. But it's going to be the same as I say with Aston Martin. The competition this year is so tough that I honestly think that the 6th place is something to be really proud of. I can see them doing better because the car looks great and Alonso hasn't skipped a beat, but I still don't think it's a race-winning car. Whereas I think the McLaren and the Aston Martin might, and Ferrari, bring the possibility to the table. Number 5, Aston Martin. Putting Aston Martin in 5th is less about Aston Martin as it is about Ferrari and McLaren. Seb should do pretty well this year if he gets on with the car, but I'm just not sure about Lance. In theory, with them basically driving last year's Mercedes, they should be at the front of the pack, but unfortunately I can't see them beating out the strong McLaren this year. I really want to see the score a 4th or even 3rd place finish, but I think it's going to be a lot of work. Lance just hasn't shown the consistency, and to be honest, neither has Seb in the past few years. As someone with 2 Aston Martin t-shirts on order, I sure hope I'm wrong. I just hope Seb doesn't cry when he sees the Ferrari pulling ahead. Number 4, Ferrari. Oh Ferrari, I have no idea where you belong. Ferrari look fine. I'm quite excited about the driver lineup, but the car and the team just seem so devoid of fighting spirit or passion. I have a lot of issues with the current state of Ferrari in Formula 1, and this isn't the place to go into it all. I'll save that rant for another time. Ultimately though, I can see that Ferrari are probably going to do better this year than they did last year. They've had plenty of time to sort themselves out and fix the underlying issues they had with the power unit. I can't promise to be excited about it, but I can see Ferrari pulling out a 4th place finish this year. Number 3, McLaren. When I first started writing notes on my thoughts for this year, we hadn't yet seen any cars on track. I was cautious about McLaren team, despite my personal love for everything they're about this year. I mean, Lando and Ricciardo, what a great lineup. Getting the new engine from Mercedes could throw up some unknown unknowns for the team this year, which I think could potentially lower them during the rankings, if they can't perform well on the track. But I'm actually starting to feel very positive about their chances, as they seem to be the most consistent and reliable of the Mercedes cars run during the testing. Both Lando and Ricciardo put in great runs on the Bahrain track, and eyes were definitely on them after the first day of action. Ricciardo clearly made a great move, but my concern is that it wasn't necessarily for this year. With the 2022 regulations around the corner, it looks like McLaren are in the run for some potential trophies in the coming years. But I think McLaren's position in the Constructors Championship this year is going to be one of 2 extremes. They'll either be 3rd or they'll be 7th. It all depends on the reliability of the car. The top dogs. There's no surprises here. This group is just 2 teams. Number 2, Red Bull. If anyone could make a run at the well-defended Constructors title right now, it would be Red Bull. Verstappen and Perez are fantastic drivers, and the added experience this year, over the team's consistent attempts to use younger talent, should help them out. The real question hanging over the team this year is how well Perez can pick up the car. In testing, he showed a strong form and seemed to understand the car pretty well. However, testing isn't always representative. I think we should just wait and see how he performs. The Red Bulls of late have been notoriously hard to drive, but it wouldn't take a lot of the team to start double stacking these podiums and leave Bottas in the dust, even if they can't quite dislodge Hamilton from the top. With Honda leaving at the end of the year, I can see them making some big leaps in the power unit, which could see Red Bull keeping pace with Mercedes, perhaps even better than they had in 2020. Number 1, Mercedes. Something pretty drastic would have to happen to not place Mercedes at the top of the pile. They've dominated this generation of F1 without much competition or stress coming from the other teams. This is in no small part thanks to the excellent drivers they have had. Not much needs to be said about the 7-time world champion at this point, but it is worth pointing out that in terms of constructor points, Hamilton can't do it all alone. While Hamilton is clearly another level of driver beyond many, if not most others on the grid, Bottas is no slouch either. In interviews, he seems to be suggesting a real desire to show what he can do this year, suggesting he hasn't really been giving it everything he's got until now. Knowing the ever-present threat of George Russell stealing his seat for 2022 season, it's no surprise that he might be keen to prove that he can race with the best, given that this year might be the last grasp in a grid-leading car, for now at least. Bottas has had an unfortunately lucky time in Mercedes. While he regularly picked up podiums, he has also had his fair share of disappointment, with mistakes from the team, punctures, and even pieces of other people's cars lodged in his own for parts of the race. Over a single lap in qualifying, even Hamilton can struggle to keep pace, at times admitting he didn't know where Bottas found the extra tenths. With the potential introduction of sprint races, he might fare pretty well with a shorter race strategy on the Saturday, which may give him a little extra confidence moving forward. If he can get his head down and focus on his long race game as well, he's sure to earn some extra points for the clear Mercedes victory. Testing hasn't been a great affair for the team in 2021, with some clear difficulties over the first few days, leading to the drivers not really getting a lot of time on track compared to some of their competitors. However, I don't think anyone is really expecting Mercedes to not pull this out again this year. Well, that's all for now. I'm really excited to see if any of my predictions are correct. What are your predictions for the 2021 Constructors Championship? Leave a comment down below, give us a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.